This week, we will focus on the availability of energy services. After all, what is the value of energy access if the energy service is frequently not available? Industrial production facilities, service industries, farmers, hospitals, schools, and so forth all rely on reliable energy services, in particular electricity. In the economies of sub-Saharan Africa, however, an average 690 hours of outages was recorded in 2015. According to the World Bank, these outages came at an estimated price of 2 percentage points of the gross domestic product. It shows how economic and social development may be stifled by unreliable electricity services. In countries where electricity services are notoriously unreliable, businesses and affluent consumers often operate their own generators as a backup. Wealthy communities may even choose to organize their own independent electricity supply, thus deteriorating the economics of the grid for those who cannot afford to go off-grid. Electricity service interruptions cost society a lot more than the so-called value of lost load. Traffic will be disrupted, food will go to waste, electronic payment systems fail, many shops will not be supplied, schools may have to be closed, and so forth. Especially societies used to a high reliability of service, like the Netherlands, where I am based, find themselves completely unprepared. Too often, only the most critical functions, like hospitals and emergency services, have their own backup facilities, which is clearly not enough to avoid societal disruption in case of a blackout, even if it is of a short duration. The provision of reliable electricity services is a continuous balancing act. As power grids lack buffer capacity, except in the case, when pumped hydropower capacity is available, power generation has to be adjusted to the variability of demand over a range of timescales. In a system with so-called dispatchable power, such as systems where coal and gas-fired power plants dominate, the balancing of generation and load is relatively easy. In the future, however, as more and more electricity is produced from variable renewable resources, the balancing act becomes much more challenging. Future energy systems that largely rely on wind and solar power will require substantial investment in energy storage capacity at different timescales. Many technological solutions are in the pipeline to solve this problem. An alternative to energy storage is to exploit the flexibility potential at the user side of the system, for example, by stimulating electric car owners to recharge their batteries during off-peak hours. Users will not spontaneously change their behavior to support the electricity system. They must be informed and incentivized to do so, for example by time-dependent price signals. Hence, the development towards a more renewable energy system will have a deep social impact. Balancing is also needed in other parts of the energy system, for example in the provision of heating services. Some of you will be living in a cold or moderate climate where you need to heat your home so that you can be comfortable on cold days, especially during the winter. If you do not use electrical heating or a stove to burn coal or wood, you may be supplied with heat through a district heating system, or you may be supplied with natural gas to fire your own individual heating system. Heat demand shows pronounced seasonal peaks, and your heat or gas service provider must cater for these seasonal demand fluctuations. For that purpose, gas providers, for example, may employ a variety of storage units, such as salt caverns, or they may keep a buffer in the form of LNG, which is liquefied natural gas. Transport fuels are another kind of energy service, and transport fuel providers also deal with seasonal demand fluctuations, less so in terms of the demand volume, but more specifically in terms of quality requirements. The composition of diesel fuel for cars and trucks must be adapted to prevent clogging of filters in the engine of your car during the winter season. Winter diesel fuel therefore differs from summer diesel, and diesel sold for winter in Germany differs from the diesel used in a much colder Arctic climate. Given the importance of reliable energy services, several indicators have been defined to monitor the availability of energy services and compare the availability performance of energy services in different countries. Regulators may impose penalties on energy infrastructure providers if their availability performance falls below set standards. And consumer protection authorities may demand compensation payments to consumers and businesses who are suffering service interruptions of longer duration than the set standard. In many countries, laws and regulations are in place to protect consumers from bankruptcy of their service provider. Assigning a provider of last resort may be part of such measures. Energy law may also define until which temperature a gas provider is obliged to fully satisfy demand. In the Netherlands, for example, the temperature is 17 degrees centigrade below zero. Besides hourly, daily, and seasonal demand fluctuations, energy infrastructure operators and service providers must be alert to long-term changes in the supply of energy resources and the demand for energy services. All around the world, electricity demand is growing as more and more functions in our homes, offices, and industries are powered by electricity. Besides an increasing demand for home comfort, climate policy ambitions are a driver of increasing electrification, also in transport and industry. With growing affluence in the world, competition for energy resources is likely to increase. And this is yet another important reason to invest in renewable energy resources. Besides investments in production capacity for electricity and gaseous energy carriers from renewable resources, substantial investments are also needed in network expansion and innovation. Such investments take a long time in planning, in permitting procedures, and in construction. Timely investment thus involves tough decision-making under many uncertainties. There is a lot more to be said about the availability of energy services. In the next videos, different types of availability will be discussed, and some of the indicators used to monitor availability will be explained. We will examine the role of digitization and automation in the provision of reliable electricity services through so-called smart grids. Furthermore, some energy leaders will share their views on how hydrogen-based energy services may emerge in the future as a new type of energy service in its own right, as well as to enhance the availability of electricity services in a future zero-carbon energy system. In this video, we started with availability of energy services in a short-term perspective, catering for hourly, daily, and seasonal demand fluctuations. This type of availability is generally captured in the term reliability of service. If we speak of availability in a longer-term perspective, it is generally denoted as security of supply. We also discussed some examples of laws and regulations designed to ensure availability by setting service standards, by assigning responsibilities to specific actors in the energy system, defining penalties for non-compliance, and obliging compensation payments to mitigate the damages for consumers if they are affected by service interruptions. Ensuring high availability evidently requires well-designed governance arrangements. Last but not least, we briefly touched on the freedom of choice that affluent consumers have to detach themselves from the grid if they see opportunities to organize a better quality of service for themselves. This subject is related to the affordability of energy services, which will be on our agenda for next week. Thank you for watching.